All right, are we ready?
We are more than ready, BK.
All right. That's what I like to hear.
Ladies, gentlemen, this is your Bedroom Super Producer Podcast, the podcast for regular folks with regular musical problems. We are your hosts. My name is JT.
And I'm BK.
And we are here to motivate, inspire, and entertain. Today we go back to the film score landscape. And we're going to cover an artist whose revival, I shall say, or reinvention was quite spectacular. And BK, why don't you let our audience know who we are going to talk about today?
Well, actually, we're talking about two people, not just one artist. One is more famous than the other, but we're actually talking about a duo, a film music production duo of Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who united to become, in my personal opinion, kind of a powerhouse of sound design / soundtrack of the 2010s and going on up till this day. So like I said, we're talking about Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails that everyone probably knows, and Atticus Ross. I'm not going to linger around too much on Nine Inch Nails, even if it's something that's probably influenced a lot of what we're hearing today. But just to say that Trent Reznor is we can say he's like old school, born in 1965, came up, saved up, bought his first synthesizers, the Moog Prodigy, actually, very, very interesting. And then on and through the years formed Nine Inch Nails in 1988 to bring him to this point in time after all the release of the multiple albums that he did, and that special industrial, special sound design-ish sound that he created with this band. And actually, something that's very interesting to know is that Atticus Ross, also a musician and from a band background, born in England actually, is part of Nine Inch Nails today. I think he joined in 2016. But he started working with Nine Inch Nails way back in, I think, 2005, 2006. So they have a link. He also had a band that was signed on a label that Trent had back in the days. So I think they've been mingling together for a while. And then at some point, I think they decided to just unite and to use all the good things that they would be able to bring to this table and start scoring. And of course, we all know them for the score from principally A Social Network in 2010, the movie about Facebook. Also notable for people who don't recognize the names, the soundtrack for Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, also Bird Box, also the HBO series from Watchmen. So you can see a little bit what the type of music that they're making. If you've been listening to these series on Netflix or HBO or watching these movies, you can understand, I think, the type of music that they're adding in the background. And if you didn't realize that it was them, well, now you know.
Yeah, I mean, ever since they quote unquote came on the scene with the score for The Social Network, they kind of became, like you said, this powerhouse, because they really came out the gate with something very, very different. Obviously very powerful in its own right, even though, you know, Hollywood is known for big orchestral scores and epic music, a lot of brass. they kind of came out of left field with this whole analog tapestry of sounds, and then some very, minimalistic piano licks. And I think it was very, very refreshing when they came out, especially with the Social Network movie score.
True, you're totally right. I think Hollywood has always oscillated between what's new in technology, what's new in music, and wanting to use that brand new technology to score movies, and always what worked the best and what brought emotion to the listeners or to the watchers, which is pretty much the classical orchestra, as we were mentioning even way back when we did our podcast on John Williams. So it's always been like a push and pull game. And I think at some point recently, maybe, 5 or 10 years ago, they kind of went back to orchestral because I think that the emotional aspect was better translated when you have masters like I said, like John Williams writing your score. It's almost impossible not to like it. I think what Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross brought to the table was the fact that they were able to take that, like you said, that analog sound, those modular synthesizers, those Moogs, and to bring them together in a way that, first of all, to create like a sort of a sonic identity that you can't really find anywhere. If you choose the right notes or the right way to produce or to synthesize your sound, you're gonna get something that's very genuine. And also, I think they found a way to bring that emotion back to the listener, and not, because usually people think of electronic music and they think of like robots, or they think of like Nintendo games or something like that, but they found a way to have those special textures and to layer the modular in a way to be sort of a kind of a foundation to really create different characters with different instruments to bring out the more emotional side. And I think that's their strong suit, and why they're such in demands for all the movies that they produced in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think you brought the perfect keyword here, and it's emotion. And even though I'd go as far as saying that 80% of their sounds are generated from synthesizers, they're able to create this incredibly eerie, unsettling, scary sometimes, and also very heartwarming sound, even though they only use, electronic performances. And how do you think they actually achieve that on a technical level?
Trent really brings all his knowledge from Nine Inch Nails. I think he has an incredible way with melody and the way a song should develop. Atticus Ross, on the other side, has more the mind of someone who's going to program things and who's going to be arranging things, and that's the way I think they do it. They probably, like I said earlier, use modular textures, like big pads, and like something that's going to be the base of their lick in the background, and then they have to play over it. And Trent Reznor has to try out different ideas, different guitars, bass guitar, distortion, use a specific boutique guitar pedal, try all these little things. And then I think Atticus goes through it, knows the bits that are good, keeps them, and they move on like that, and they keep editing and moving forward. So in a way, it's to all the bedroom producers out there who have to do it all themselves, it's good sometimes to have like a soundboard or someone else to kind of bounce off ideas, or someone who has another vision of the different sounds, because sometimes you're going to do something and it's going to be genius, but you think that it sucks. And other times you do something, you think it's genius, but it's not that good, and you should keep moving. So I think their duo works perfectly in that way. Atticus Ross has like a special, he has fine taste towards like find the right lick or the right loop or the right texture. And Trent brings the whole the song, the melody, the eeriness, the where it should go, how it should feel. And I think that the way they merge these two, the capacity that they both have to do this, is what brings the magic.
I would also add, judging from some videos, like in-studio videos that I saw on YouTube, that there's a big performance component to their art. Even though they use electronic instruments, you can often see, Ross at the computer, layering, mixing, doing these kinds of things, whereas Reznor is more of the guy fiddling on these weird old school analog instruments. And I think that, like you said, for our younger generation who's listening right now, it's very important with electronic music to add the human element through your fingers, your body, the way you interact with an interface or a controller or something. And in several interviews I heard, Trent Reznor saying, sometimes there's some imperfection and weirdness that you cannot achieve with software. So if you want to achieve this very warm, rich sound that they have, you're gonna probably need to go the analog route. Am I right?
You don't have to be all analog. I think they mix a little bit of a lot of things. I think what they're trying to do is really to find the personality in the instruments that they use. Like you said, I've watched a couple of videos concerning regarding the social network, and they were talking about the Swarmatron, that green box that they used mainly for the theme for the Zuckerberg character. And yes, it's analog. It's this synth with this ribbon controller, so you can control pitch, but it's very. Trent seems to say that it's imperfect. It's very difficult to control. It's very difficult for melodies, but it's the fact that you can feel that you're always trying to control it a little bit in a way that it's always drifting slightly, and that you have to bring it back. And I think that's what brings the personality to an instrument. When things are too perfect, when things are always in the right key, the perfect chord and everything, you feel that it's very machine-like. It's too perfect. And when you say that you have to go the analog way, you're right in the way that analog, you can have that imperfectness in analog, and you can touch it. The knobs are there. You can detune it slightly. You can have oscillator drift if you have a very old instrument. So you have that special character, or you can have that faulty chip that all the first 808s used, and that gave it that character that even if you made a TR-808 today, you wouldn't have the same character because that faulty chip is not being made anymore. So it's that kind of things that bring that special character. And like you said, the analog brings the character, and that's part of their sound. So in a way, yes, you kind of need you can do it in the digital format, but you have to have specific tools that drift in a specific way. You have to be very conscious if you want to do it in the digital realm. In analog, it's at your fingertips.
So you got to get crafty if you want to use, those Arturias, or because it's going to be a bit more tedious to get those performances out, since you're using the mouse basically, or unless you are routing all of these CC controllers to a controller that has several knobs. It's right there at your fingertips, like you said, when it's analog, right?
Exactly. And like you said, it's a lot about performing and layering different performances on top of each other, and that's what gives it that specialness, that analog, that special grit that we're always looking for. The fun thing and the bad thing is that most analog, you can't really recall anything depending on what you're working with. Yes, on a Voyager or on a little fatty or on most Moog gear these days, you can save your patches and everything. But if you're turning the knobs while you're performing, you can't really recall that. So it's just burned into the performance if you're recording only the audio. I'm sure there's a way to do it to record also the MIDI and the audio, so you can probably recall if you save the patch. I'm sure there's a workaround to be able to recall that, but I think not recalling it, not being able to save a patch, turning the knob at this specific point, I think that also gives it that specialness. Anyway, that's the way I see it.
You also brought up a very key component of their sound, and you touched upon layering. And I was listening to, actually, I was watching Gone Girl this morning just to remind me of how, like, the interplay between the images, the dialogue, and their music. And they are very much masters at mixing all of these analog layers. And, you know, I actually stopped using a lot of analog stuff because it takes such a big range, you know. And I wonder if you have any ideas how they achieve, you know, this silky smooth sound, even though it's very raw and it has a lot of punch and energy. It still takes up very little space in the movie context, and you know, it's always very much in the background, and it works great for the emotions, but it does not take all of that space. So how do you think they achieve that?
I think it's just a question of like choosing the right sounds, not putting too many layers necessarily together. They master the fact that not having any sound can be a sound in itself. At some point, you can't always have sound. If you're making a movie or you're crafting music for a movie, at some point the dialogue has to have space, the imagery has to have space, so you really have to be very, very economical sometimes with your sound. And I think they have that in mind. I'm sure that if you would listen to the first takes that they would do of something, it would be maybe something a little bit overbearing, but once they chop out those little itty bitty like golden nuggets of everything that they do, I think it's just a question of, personally, of like being very minimalist and turning everything down. Analog has this way of cutting through pretty much anything, even if it's pretty low in the background. It's such the harmonics are, there's such a harmonic rich content in an analog signal, especially even in modular, that's like that runs on like 10 volts, the signal. That's, I think it kind of does you a favor, and it's right there. It doesn't need to be in your face like everything digital and out of the box that we're used to hearing, and everything that like the limiter that are cranked up and everything that's in the club, like in your face. Like a Moog drone pad doesn't need to be super loud. It can just be in the background and you're still gonna feel it. And it's gonna be very different from anything else. It's gonna be different from the dialogue. It's gonna be different from all the images that you see. It's gonna be different from the Foley.
Right, so one could say that everything that they do and everything that they keep for their soundtracks is very much intentional. And you know, sometimes I tried to compose, you know, ambient music, and you can really get lost into creating these drones and, you know, layering a bunch of different pads and, you know, guitars ringing and stuff like that. So you got to kind of tip your hat off to them for actually sifting through all of these takes, all of these little performances that they make, and creating a cohesive result out of all of that, and a musical one also.
Yeah, true. I totally agree. Ambient, it's kind of it's very easy to just get lost in like the eeriness and the ambient outside too many drugs, too much of everything, like with no purpose and no direction at all. And they're like you said, they're masters at just keeping the right ambience with the right little chord melody, or the right 2-3 notes, the piano notes with the small reverb on top of each note that conveys the exact right emotion of the situation. So yeah, I think it's like I said earlier, it's a combination. I think the arrangement, they're very good arrangers at throwing away what's not needed and keeping exactly those 2 small notes. It's very difficult when you're an accomplished musician and you've been doing it for 30-40 years to be able to just say that, no, this one note is enough. And when you do movies, you have to do that. Sometimes if I recall, like what we said when we did the John Williams podcast, he has a good way of not putting any sound sometimes. He knows that sometimes it doesn't require a theme. It doesn't. And he talks with the director and he says, no, there's not going to be any sound. Do you agree? And I think that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, they have that nailed to a science. Sometimes there's no sound, or it's just like a faraway drone in the back just to keep the tension going. And I think the like analog synth and modular, they're pretty much made to do that, to keep the tension and to go up and to go down and to play with your emotions. But you have to do it in a specific way. You can't. It's not out of the box. Those modules and the Moog, they don't do that. You have to inject that human imperfection.
Absolutely. And in preparing for the episode, I was trying to figure out, who did what in their collaborative effort, and I went back to a movie score that Atticus Ross made without Trent Reznor in the Book of Eli.
That's an incredible score.
Yeah, it's really like an ambient masterpiece. But what dawned on me is the fact that you can hear, like the control over all of the ambient layers and the sound design and the nice little Foley percussions and all of that. But what struck me is how once you add Trent Reznor to the compositional mix, if I may, is his knack for playing with minor and major to create this unsettling feeling. And when you listen, especially to the Social Network and one of their most recent ones, the mid-90s one, the one for the Jonah Hill Project, the series, you can really tell that they kind of understand how the human brain processes emotions where you, for a second there, you're absolutely filled with joy, and then you recall a painful memory, and boom, you go back to this brooding, dark place. And they kind of convey that through their approach to writing the music. It's one thing to, create pads and layer them and add distortion for the most, epic or dark moments, but when you actually write the music on purpose to also create that, I think that's where they separate from the pack, is what I'm trying to say.
They use that chord switching or something. Let's say you take a minor chord progression, and the chord is supposed to be minor in the sequence, but you switch it to a major just to bring out that a little bit more hopeful at this moment, but still with a little bit of tension of the minor part, and then you switch it back. And they're very good at doing that, and that's why you can almost feel that sometimes the beginning of the progression is very down to earth, minor, not negative, but not sad, but not hopeful or joyous. And then at some point you get these little hints where he switches a chord, and this is not supposed to be an A minor. Oh, it's an A major. Oh no, but he comes back, so you come back to the D minor like progression, and he switches like that, and he plays like you said. They understand how to play with the human emotions, how sometimes you're not sure, and you're not going to be sad for 3 minutes, or you're not going to be happy for 3 minutes. You're going to be sad for 1.5 minutes, and then 15 seconds you're going to be a little bit happy, but then you're going to remember the fact that you were sad, and you're going to alternate like that. And a movie is kind of like that. There's hope at specific places that need to be accentuated, but it's not always clear cut. They have a very good knack at rendering the conflicting human emotions throughout a movie, and that's what I like about their soundtracks.
Exactly. And going back to my my morning movie Gone Girl, it's the exact same. They understood that the character of the wife, who's arguably a very disturbed person, can also show signs of being extremely gentle, and the whole soundtrack is about that. Is about you bouncing between, oh, the husband's the killer, oh no, the husband is just this poor guy who's been dragged into this crazy murder affair, and then the wife, who possibly only wants to be a perfect wife but is dragged into becoming this crazy murderous bitch. Pardon my French there, but it's the actual words that they use in the movie. And to convey that into music is quite a feat, I will say.
Yeah, there's a lot of conflicting emotions, and not just from the characters in that movie, but also from because the movie, the music from a movie has different, you have different jobs, different roles, and it's usually to portray a character, but it's also to portray the situation, or to portray a specific mood at a specific point in the movie. And I think in Gone Girl, it's very masterfully done, because they find a way to portray the characters and also the situation, and sometimes what the characters feel is conflicting with the situation, and you have kind of this expectation of, you believe that a character is a certain way, but then the situation tells you no, he's not that way, and then you believe that you flip-flop, you think that it's the other way around, but no, it's not the other way. So it's a very flip-flopping movie with different things. You never know who's good, who's bad, and they find a way to express that in such an awesome way.
Yeah, and I like the fact that the music never truly gives you the emotional answer you're looking for.
Yeah, it's always an enigma.
Exactly.
You're not sure. It's always a question mark. It never resolves.
Exactly. So moving on, I'd also like to touch upon the idea, because I like to talk about that in the book and all of that, the musical ego, and even though these guys are superstars in their own rights, especially Trent Reznor, I like the fact that they don't bother with like memorable themes, and that's actually something that I heard Trent Reznor say in interviews, is the fact that once he gets in the studio, he leaves his ego at the door, and he does what's needed for the project, and their music again is a testament to that, where you might not be able to remember a theme, like you can't probably hum the main theme at the start of maybe Social Network is the only bad example I could come up with, but what I'm trying to say is I salute the fact that they don't have or don't need memorable melodies to make incredibly powerful scores. And seeing a lot of people online trying to break into this industry, they kind of do the opposite. They try to have those Williams-esque very catchy, memorable themes, and these guys are doing the exact opposite, and it works as well.
I think they're doing exactly what you should be doing. You're supposed to put the sound, the audio, the music is supposed to rise, to give the movie like another, to put the movie on another level, to make it better, to make you understand the images better, to make so you can get a feel for the characters and everything. You're not supposed to watch the movie and think about, oh, this is a 9-inch nail track. It's supposed to be something almost that you forget, that's in the background, but if you remove it, you notice it. So basically, their music is, if it's there, you don't notice it, but if you remove it, it feels empty. And I think when, as a sound designer, soundtrack composer, if you're able to do that, then you've done your job correctly. Because it's not supposed to be like a pop song. It's supposed to be something that gives the images and the characters more meat on it. But it's not something that should, well, we love listening to them separately from the movie. I have tons of soundtracks that I've never seen the movie, but in a way, it's supposed to give that the movies and the images that special something to make it better. And if you've done that, then you've done a good job.
One last bit of praise I'd like to give their scores is, and I believe I will be correct in 30 years, is the fact that their sounds, because they're analog and because they are, sound designed in a certain way, will stand the test of time. Compare that to, Vangelis's work and other synthesizer heavy scores. I think that their work, because of the nature of them, the raw analog material, will help those scores sound as fresh, in the future. And that's also something to keep in mind if you're trying to achieve that kind of sound, why it is the way it is.
It's that way because they're crafting the sound, they're making it unique. It's not I believe that so many sounds or so many songs today, you open up a synth and you hear a patch and you're like, oh, this is the patch from this song. Oh, this is the patch from this Beyonce song. Or, oh, this is the Beck thing. Or that's kind of, I don't think it's ever going to happen to Trent Reznor. They're so much into too deep to design their sounds and to make something unique that fits with the images and the video, that you're, first of all, modular, you can't recall patches, so there you go. And so it's something that you record it once and that's it. You're not going to be able to recreate, even if you plug in the same wires and the same thing. Usually it doesn't sound exactly the same because the nature of the beast and the electronic circuits and not being perfect. So I think you're totally right that it's something that's probably going to be timeless. I still believe that the composer from the 80s that used specific machines for their soundtrack, it's still timeless because we still come back to it. We're not going to associate necessarily a specific synth to Trent Reznor. Well, perhaps the Moog Voyager. I think it's something that he's been using on everything, even on the recent stuff. I think there's even an interview on the Moog website that it's his go-to synthesizer, and he even says that he has spare ones just in case the one that he's using breaks down. He can grab the spare one. So imagine how it's part of his sound. When you have spare Voyagers, it's part of your sound.
Imagine living in a world where you have spare Voyagers.
That's a word.
Wow.
I want to be living in that world.
Yeah, well, you will. I know you, and you.
Maybe not the big one, just the small one.
I trust your love for analog gear will win in the end. So I think we have come to the point where it's time for the audience to discover these incredible artists if they don't know them just yet, and to do that, where would you point our audience to? Like, what soundtrack or song would you have them listen if they want to kind of understand the core or the essence of these guys' work?
There's so much good stuff. If you have no idea who they are, I would say go and listen to the Social Network and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Those are the two, I think, the most famous ones, and I think it represents their sounds pretty well. If you want to discover something new, anyway, on my side, I think some gems that not necessarily everyone knows. I'm gonna say two things, and they're not even movies; they're from documentaries. One, the Vietnam War. I really love the scoring that they did for that. I think they did that in 2017. Was it a Ken Burns? I'm not sure. We'd have to look that up. So Vietnam War, and also another documentary, Before the Flood. And I would encourage people to listen to the soundtrack and also go listen to the documentary. It's about global warming and the impact of everything that we human beings are doing to this planet, and it's interesting on both fronts.
Is that the one with in collaboration with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Exactly, that's the one. 2016. Like beautifully shot documentary, and awesome soundtrack, and it's something that really it makes you think. I like stuff that makes me think.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember seeing it like the year it came out, but I didn't know at the time that it was them. So I'll have to go back myself and refresh my ears. Yeah, so you were about to say something. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what about you?
Well, obviously, I like their more melodic scores. So obviously the Social Network is where it really got on my radar. I really like the interplay of, acoustic pianos with all of the analog layers. I feel it's more easy to listen to if you go on a walk or something, Other than that, I just listened this morning to mid-90s and Wave. Mid-90s is more of a positive one, at least from the feeling I got. I haven't watched the series yet, but I feel like, with the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and then Bird Box, they were really into that eerie, almost horror-like stuff. But they still have a lot to offer on a more human, positive, gentle side of thing, and so I was really impressed with that one. And Wave is like pushing the ambient, slow down tempo envelope to a whole new level that I hadn't experienced before. So it's really like I wouldn't even know how to organize and structure writing music like that. So it's really something that I'll go back to for sure to learn and try to understand how they go about, building these tracks. Because as you said in the episode, like they don't write that like a pop tune, and yet it's the way they structure and sequence the track is very, very intentional. Again, I'm going to use that word more and more. And so, I don't know, there's something to learn from this soundtrack as well.
I don't know Waves that well, so I'm gonna go back to it also.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like them. They don't necessarily reinvent the wheel, but it's just the fact that it's much slower that I thought was so interesting, in tempo-wise. Yeah, something
for me to check out.
Of course. That's why we love movie music so much, I think. It's the fact that it's not just music, it's the whole human experience that goes around it. And I think that's why we do music also.
Well, true. It's a way to sometimes express yourself, or to express things that you didn't know were in there, and to understand later that that song or that sound that you wrote was about this, that you didn't quite figure out a certain problem that you had or something, and it just came out that way. So it's a wonderful way to reflect just on yourself.
Very well said. And I think that's a point that I want to reemphasize often in these podcasts. The fact that it's not always about learning all of these technical things that you need to create computer music. Sometimes, making music is just making one sound, one note, and see where you can take that one note, like how far you can take it, So on these words of pseudo wisdom, take it away, BK.
Yeah, well, like we always say, I hope this podcast has inspired you to get to know these two characters, Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor. Also, if you don't know Nine Inch Nails, check them out. They're awesome. There's so many albums out there. The sound design and the rawness of the sound is also very interesting. Like I said, Atticus Ross is now officially part of Nine Inch Nails. I think he joined in 2016. And keep hustling, keep making that great music, and have a great week, as we always say.
And we'll see you in the next episode.
All right, guys. Peace out.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. Remember to subscribe if you like what you hear. We're on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. Also, if you want to support us, head on to delicatebeats.com. You can find our serum packs, our contact instruments, and also plenty of freebies if you subscribe to the newsletter. Don't forget to follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and once again, keep making that awesome music.